Welcome, everybody. This is Smashing the Party. I'm not sure if I'm going to edit this out or not, so it may make the final cut. I have been telling you about this interview I've been wanting to have with Chloe Wagner, and we had a little bit of preamble before just to talk, and I feel based on my conversation with Chloe beforehand that we can be pretty candid and open, and hopefully we're all going to learn something. As I told you before, the whole point of this interview is to expose not only issues with our system with the healthcare, but also how people that have different personal issues that also become this blockade for getting things done and just wreaking havoc on their lives. I don't want to misquote or mischaracterize Chloe's situation, so I'll let her come on and speak to that. But everybody, this is Chloe. I really appreciate you coming on. This isn't like MSNBC or Fox. This is just Nate Bomberger's Smashing the Party, ranting and raving. But I want to thank you for coming on. And by the way, I'm not sure if I mentioned this in the preamble. Chloe and my wife know each other. Obviously, people have questions about transgender because it's not talked about. There's all kinds of societal pressure against it. Congratulations on your journey. Can you tell me, like, when did you know that this was something that made you different, or did you think you were different, or can you talk about that a little bit?
When I was about 4 years old, I had a feeling like something was off. My grandmother used to put makeup on me and stuff, and it just was something that it just something felt off. But with the stigma of the society, I had to be a man and be a husband and be a dad.
You knew at an early age. Did your parents have an idea of what was going on, or was it just something that you kept inside? Or again, I'm asking because I imagine that once you realize at a young age that you're a little different, there's all kinds of there's a crisis of what people know and what they don't.
So I did, anyone does, you kind of stuff it down and you don't talk about it. You try to act a certain way. You try to have this persona of being the societal person that you're supposed to be. Like, when I did finally come out, like, my parents realized at that point, after talking with them and showing them like some instances throughout my childhood and life, they were like, oh, duh, yeah, here's our sign. But I really did try to stuff them down and not really allow those feelings or things to come out.
How old were you when you decided to come out and talk about this? And can you talk a little bit about that? I know it's more recent, but and what that led to, because as I understand it, Jackie, through that.
Yeah. So basically, what happened was one night in 2018, my wife and I were still together. We were struggling a little bit, and we were trying to spice things up. And I just said to her, "Hey, I want to do something. Don't know if you'll be interested in it or not." And that was the night that she met Chloe. And it was a big shock to her. She was fine with it to the point we used to go out together Friday nights dressed up. That was our date night. So I would dress as Chloe on Friday nights. The kids would be away and they didn't know anything about it. And she basically told me, if you decide to go on hormones, like, that's when I'm out. I'm attracted to males, not females. And one day in January, I just said, hey, I'm going on hormones. And it was a few days later, she moved out.
Talk to me about what made you go, all right, look, I need hormones. So you said, hey, look, we're going to try something kinky, spice it. I'm going to dress in female attire. And then that was the kink. It sounds like she was suspect that this was the end because she gave you an ultimatum. But talk to me about that.
Yeah, it was weird because, like, at first she would be like looking through magazines and her magazines, and she would be like, you would look good in this, or you would. So it was weird because, like, she was on board, but she wasn't on board. And having that freedom to express myself on the outside, how I felt on the inside, was the game changer for me. And that's why the hormones came into play, because I realized at that point that this is who I am and is who I need to be. And that continual lying to myself all those years, and to her and the kids, like, it wasn't fair to anyone. And I needed to be me. So that's how the hormones came into play.
And is it typical that, again, I don't know if you know this, is it typical for a trans person, once they come to that conclusion or when they come out, does it typically, are there, as I read things, I'm understanding that there's some people that are trans that don't go through the surgery or don't take hormones. Is that correct even? So there's a kind of a whole spectrum of everything. And you just, so I guess my question is, at that point, you just felt inside that was your identity, I assume? And that's what you made you move forward. Okay. And then now, so you had talked about the fact that you had, is it corrective surgery? What's the proper term?
So the proper term is gender. Some people say confirmation. I like affirmation, because I'm affirming how I feel on the inside.
Affirmation surgery?
On the outside. Okay. I like that. That's the term that I like to use.
Okay. And obviously everyone has this, their mind explodes when they think about that. And I remember at a young age reading some article about this. And again, I was a voracious reader. It wasn't out of curiosity or sexual identity curiosity. It was literally just because I'm like, I don't know where it was, but I remember it walked me through at a young age. I remember walking through this process of what they do and everything else. And I don't want to get explicit, but I remember thinking, just being blown away. And what made me, the reason why I touched on that is because Jackie told me that you were excited when you said, hey, I have a vagina. I think you said to her, and I don't want to embarrass you.
Yes.
And I thought that was, it made me happy. It was a happy feeling, like you're on your journey and you're finally like affirming who you are. So my question is, was that had to be scary? How did you get the information enough to feel comfortable about it? And was there, as a man here, I'm thinking, oh, how can I, okay, so
yeah,
say what you're comfortable with, but there's those logistical questions of, wait a second here. I'll just give you a quick, just funny. I was a drug user when I was younger. I did acid, and I remember coming home and my mom was looking at me funny, and I went to go to the bathroom and I couldn't find my penis. And I remember freaking out. Of course, it was in my mind, but, and I'm not trying to make a funny about you. I'm just saying, like, that literally was one of the worst trips I had in my life. And I just remember thinking, because all of a sudden I had nothing there. And I'm not, I hope I'm being, sensitive, but I'm saying, like, those are the things that people are like, what the hell? How did you learn? And talk to me about as much as you're comfortable with on that spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a popular TV show on, I don't know if I'm allowed to use the name, so I'm just go there with
you can do whatever.
So I was watching I Am Jazz, and Jazz went through the affirmation surgery.
Would you recommend people watch this show, by the way, to learn more about?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And not only that, but there's also a program, a show that Katie Couric did. It's called Gender Revolution, and it's all about transgender people and non-binary people. And I like that one personally as a training tool, or an education tool, not a training tool, but an education tool for people to get their head, like, to understand what all we have to go through. She did a fantastic job with that story.
Okay, cool. I'll have to check that out. I Am Jazz,
yeah, it's really,
and then the Katie Couric. Okay.
I Am Jazz, yep, and the Katie Couric special. Oh my! Now I slipped.
I'll put it together, and I'll post links in the comments when I do that. That's fine. So
awesome. So I watched that stuff to educate myself, and I was Googling everything I could, watching things on the internet. And I was like, this is where I'm heading. This is what I need to do. And then my journey started with, okay, what do I got to do to get on hormones? What do I got to do to be able to get the surgery? Because there's so much involved. There's this thing called the W path. which is it's a set of standards that surgeons must go by in order for someone like me to have the gender affirmation surgery. It's a lot of work. It's not something that is done overnight. I had to actually go to Planned Parenthood to get placed on hormones for the first time. And you have to see a psych.
Why couldn't you go to your Why couldn't you go to your doctor?
Most family doctors don't handle hormone therapy, so you have to find a doctor.
Specialist.
Yeah, basically it's a doctor. There are family, like my doctor I currently have is a family doctor, and she specializes.
But it's like, it sounds like it's a fringe thing, right? It's not put front and center, and maybe that's a systemic problem. We're not talking about these issues front and center. Hey, first, as a black person, I understand the variation that can happen between healthcare, the way I'm treated versus somebody else. And so I can't imagine being where you're at. That has to be requiring specialists and requiring all these protocol, it sounds. And so let me just fill in a little backstory. You're going through this stuff. When did you end up in the position where you and Jackie met and your recovery? Because I didn't talk about that. I wanted you to say that struggle. Or were you always suppressing with drugs and alcohol, or how did that come about? And if I phrased that incorrectly, let me know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was always suppressing my life, period. My feelings, period, with drugs and alcohol. More alcohol than drugs. I did get into some drugs, but it was weird. I had gone to rehab, did 45 days in a rehab facility down in Tennessee. And that's when I realized that there's a better life out there. And then I was basically just white knuckling, as they call it. I wasn't working a program. I wasn't in a program doing anything like that. I was just seeing therapists.
When she talks about a program, she's talking NA. That's the term people use for programs. I just wanted to clarify that.
When I finally did get involved in a program, a friend of mine that I work with was like, hey, you need a meeting. And I was like, I've never been there because of who I was as a trans person. You never know how people are going to receive you, because I've gone to meetings before where they just look at you and everyone kind of sits on the opposite side of the room because, ooh, there's something different. I've had that happen to me. So this friend of mine, then I ended up joining a home group and then got involved in that home group. And then my friend asked me to go to a meeting one day, and it turns out it was Jackie's anniversary. And,
Jackie's my wife, by the way, for those that don't know.
And that's how we met. And it was fantastic. And afterwards, she invited me to go to lunch with them, and her and I just sat side by side, and we had our own little conversation the whole time we were there. And that's when I knew I wanted Jackie to be my sponsor.
Oh, that's awesome. And by the way, I think I knew that, but I wasn't sure if she was your sponsor or not. I love everything about that story. I love that story. You went to your first meeting and she was there and made you feel comfortable. I love that story because we weren't really excited about going to these places because you didn't know how you were going to be treated. And I can imagine people pointing fingers or staring. And even now when you're going through on your journey, people may hear you or look at you and just immediately put you into a category.
Absolutely. And the funny part about it was that's an all-women meeting. And so walking in there and having that experience, Jackie has been completely amazing to me. She's been a lifesaver and definitely a pillar in my career.
That's awesome. So what challenges I can't imagine as a black person in Lancaster County, mostly conservative Lancaster County, I understand a little bit being a little different, but not to the effect where you're having to choose. Do you go into it? When did you mentally say, okay, I'm a woman, I'm going to a woman's meeting, or I need to use the girls' bathroom, or that kind of when did you, I don't even know how to ask the question, Chloe, but.
You're good.
Okay.
I got you. One night I was out with my mom. This is prior to being in recovery when I first came out. And I went to the women's bathroom at Walmart, and this lady came out of the bathroom, went up to one of the people at one of the cashiers or something is like, there's a man in the bathroom. There's a man in the bathroom. And like my mom had to go over and explain, hey, no, she's transgender. Because at that point in time, my hair was short. Obviously, I still have a deep voice that I hate, but unfortunately, I didn't really follow through with voice lessons yet. So that's something in the works. But yeah, so I've had that experience as well where people are like, what are you doing? And like I said, the same way with going to meetings where they shun me. So.
You said something else. So, this voice lessons, what do you mean by that? Don't the hormones typically change the voice, or what? How does that work?
So if you're going from female to male, it does deepen the voice, the hormones, but from going from male to female, completely different story. The hormones do not change the voice. It's something that you can either get training on. There is a surgery. It's very dangerous.
Where they probably they probably give you a higher pitch or something? Okay, interesting.
They do something to the voice box to get you a higher pitch, yeah.
Interesting. That's something that maybe people, that's an interesting tidbit that I had no idea. I just assumed that when you took the hormones that your voice would change, and I didn't realize that there was this difference. So why do you think there's so much suicide in the transgender community?
Oh my, that's easy. That's so easy. Because we're shunned. People make fun of us. You feel unwanted everywhere you go. Especially, let's be real. Let's be real, Nate. We're in Podunk, Pennsylvania, right? I live in south of where you do.
You're on that Mason-Dixon line, bro. You're on that Mason-Dixon line, girl. You know what I mean? And by the way, sometimes I say bro for anybody, so I apologize if nothing I'm saying. Okay, cool.
All good. Living in Podunk, Pennsylvania, people don't like people like me. And it sucks and it's sad because in the profession that I'm in, I have had people, I've had a white supremacist that wanted nothing to do with me at the end of their journey at work come up to me crying on my shoulder and saying that I have changed their lives so much. You know what I mean? So that's the point of this. If people would just get a chance, because we're people too. It doesn't matter what our exterior is. It matters what our interior is. And that's what I advocate for.
I love it. And I talk about, everyone wants to pull out Martin Luther King quotes when you talk about the color of your skin, the character. He didn't even talk about gender in that quote. But I think what I try to do on my show as much as possible is not only when I'm talking about policy, but talk about the end game. What do we want? But then when we're talking about people, put yourself in their fucking shoes. Stop fucking, just because it didn't happen to you, just because you don't know anybody that died from COVID, doesn't mean it's fucking made up. And this is where I get fired up, because I'm like, every single fucking religion has the golden rule built into it. And we're this Christian country. We're in fucking Christian County, Pennsylvania. And these motherfuckers are literally not doing this fucking thing. And so suicide really is coming from the effects and the pressure from everyone else not accepting and then ostracizing this person. Of course, then I'm sure this person has all kinds of turmoil going on of acceptance. I had turmoil going on. I wasn't going through gender identity issues. Imagine adding that on top of whatever other fucking trauma you have. We all have some kind of trauma. That was one of the things as I'm researching this, to making sure that I'm covering the things I think that are, pertinent. I found that every fucking article was talking about suicide. Suicide. So I just wanted to get your take. It's pretty obvious, but again, what can we do? What can be done to curb the suicide in LGBT and the transgender?
So some of it is, to be honest with you, I think some of it is the lack of resources.
Well, you said you had to Google stuff to learn about yourself.
Yes. So what I'm saying though is lack of resources. Some trans people might not have the means to afford the hormone therapy. You know what I mean? Because it's expensive. Let's be real.
It's not covered by insurance?
It is covered by insurance, but if you don't have insurance or you're on Obamacare or whatever, I don't know how much the coverage is there. So if you don't, let's say you're make jack squat at work. I'll be frank about that.
Yeah.
If it wouldn't be for insurance covering my hormones, I don't know what I'd do. So it's lack of resources. It's
lack of diagnosis, I'm sure, in kids, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. But not only that, it's also when someone does come out, there's this conversion therapy bullshit that's out there, and that is one that irritates me beyond, because they're like, oh, it's just a phase, so we're going to try to convert them back.
I can't imagine someone saying to me, Nate, listen, let's just flip the switch and say society is everyone's homosexual in society, and I'm born the way I am right now, okay? And everyone's, look, dude, we're gonna put you through some fucking schooling and some classes, and eventually you're gonna want to fucking put a dick in your mouth. And I'm sorry to be explicit, but there's no fucking way. So why do we think it's gonna work for other people? Like, do you know what I'm saying? And I'm not making fun. I'm saying, like, why would some kind of classroom, or unless you're putting me in a pressure cooker and like guns to my head and saying we're gonna kill your pugs, I'm not, like, there's no conversion. Like, and that's why I tell people, like, think about yourself. Could I convert you if I put a really good program together? Most people are like, no. Then what the fuck makes you think you're gonna convert Chloe? What the fuck? That's, again, an example of people not understanding situations. So I cut you off. I'm sorry. I get fired up when I think about, because it comes down to walking in someone else's shoes all the time. It's all the time. What would it be like? And that's why I wanted to get you on here. I was like, people need to understand, okay, yeah, this person's going through this identity reforming and kind of truth. They're finding their truth. And then now they're stuck with the bureaucracy of trying to figure out how to do it, how to get to where they need to be.
Because Nate, here's the other thing. It's so hard. I don't care if you're gay, trans, whatever. It is so hard for you to come out of the closet and admit. And I don't know why it is so hard. I don't understand why it is so hard, but it is. So you finally get the courage to do that. And then you get these assholes that are like, now we're going to convert, we're going to take you to conversion therapy and get you back to where you should be, because that's how society feels that you should be. You know what I mean? And it's bullshit, and it irritates me. Like, it really irritates me.
Yeah. Again, I think it's also saying, hey, by the way, you don't know what you're taught. You don't know yourself. We know you better than you do.
Yeah.
And you're wrong. Everything about you is wrong. And so we're going to fix you. Instead of saying, hey, by the way, this is common. Jackie, I don't know much about it, but she said something about a pre-existing condition or something. There was some kind of weird criteria.
Yeah, so
By the way, you can correct me if I said something that was incorrect or not accurate. I'm not.
So recently, obviously, I had the gender affirmation surgery, and I have disability insurance through work.
Are you allowed to tell me what you do?
I can tell you what I do. I can't tell you where I'm a behavioral health associate supervisor. So I work at a drug and alcohol facility.
Okay, cool.
But I've been planning this journey of getting the gender affirmation surgery. So I've got the health insurance. I know that I have to be at work a year before I can get FMLA. When I have the disability insurance, like, everything's in place and everything's going to be good. I have the surgery. Right after the surgery, I file the claim. And they're like, okay, cool. In 3 days, you'll have a payment. So you can get paid while you're off. You don't have to burn your vacation. And then I get a phone call from the claims person, and her response to me was, yeah, we're not going to cover this because this is labeled as a pre-existing condition.
What's labeled as a pre-existing?
Apparently, gender dysphoria is labeled as a pre-existing condition.
Motherfuckers, do you know pre-existing condition is only in America, by the way? That's only in the context of America.
You know what? I agree. So this lady starts telling me this, and I said, do you understand that I don't give a shit like what you say? It's going to be a pre-existing condition because W path, which you have to before be on hormones. You got to see a psychiatrist.
You broke up there a little bit. Say that last statement again about the W path.
So you have to go through, it's the W path. It's the rules and regulations in order to get gender affirmation surgery. And it's a lot of steps. You have to get on hormones. You have to see a psychologist. You have to see a psychiatrist. You have to have a primary care. You have to get letters that you've been on these things for a year, or been seeing someone for a diagnosis of gender dysphoria.
So they're creating the fucking pre-existing condition that they're denying you for.
Exactly. Exactly. So how can it not be a pre-existing condition? It has to be a pre-existing condition because you have to go through these things in order to make this happen. So they're using this as a loophole to take my fucking money. Pardon my language.
You speak freely, Chloe.
Hey, like I get fired up about this because I work hard for my money, and where I work, like, you don't work there to get rich. You don't do it. I went from making $80,000 a year down to less than $30,000 a year. You do this for your heart. You do this to help others. You know what I mean? And in the end result, they bend you over and you take one up the tailpipe. You know what I'm saying? And it's so wrong. It's just so wrong.
This is where it's a perfect kind of paradox of the healthcare system that we've created. What the fuck is a pre-existing condition, and when does it start? As soon as you're born, you obviously have some fucking pre-existing condition. Like anybody, right?
Exactly.
Oh my God, he coughed when he was little. Where's the line stop? Okay, he had whooping cough. I swear to God, if they could, they would put chicken pox on there, and you would never be able to, like, it's a profit-driven model. Of course, anything they can do to make it so they don't have to pay a claim, and that's what they're doing. They're putting you out to dry.
Everything's a loophole. And I told him, I said, this isn't no backache. I'm not going in for a backache. I don't have a tummy ache. I said, I'm literally getting my genitals cut off and made into something else. Like, how is that pre-existing? You know what I mean? So I get so fired up about it. And yeah, I even went to their supervisor and had it out with their supervisor as well. And she said the same thing. The claim's going to be denied.
Is that still in flux right now?
Yeah. And then I reached out to my HR, and my HR reached out to our benefits person, who reached out to their person that they deal with at that firm. And I just found out today, right before we got on, that, yeah, it was going to be denied. So, like, I did reach out to an attorney who I've worked with before in the past that is an attorney for the LGBTQ. And then they specialize in disability claims like this. And they basically said, here, if you think that you're going to be off work for 12 weeks, then, it's different. But if you're only going to be off for like 6 weeks, she said, is it really worth it? And that in my head, part of me is, you know what, F them, let's go get them. Because I'm tired of these companies creating these loopholes that they can collect our money. It's stealing. To me, it's stealing. It's freaking stealing. Let's be real. But if we do that, Nate, it's fucking insurance fraud. Pardon my language again. So that's where it's at.
First of all, it is expected that you drop at least 4 F-bombs. You're only at 3, so you've got many more to go. You've got 1 more to go. The other thing is that, don't worry about your language. That's part of my allure is that I talk freely. So that being said, it's where, and again, focusing on the healthcare side of it, this situation is a problem that they created because of their profit model, if you think about it, right? Because they're saying, look, we're profit at all costs. It's not about your fucking well-being, Chloe. It's not about your, journey. It's about the fact that whether or not this is, optimal on their bottom line to support your fucking cause. When this has direct implications on your mental health, has direct implications on your fucking physical health, everything. And so yet they're saying, hey, no, we're not going to cover this. And then they're going to give you a fucking heart attack and stress because all the other shit that you got to go through. And now you've got these bills coming in. And it's like we're creating problems. Guess what that means? That means more money for their bottom line because you're stressed now.
More money for the bottom line. And then they want to know why people commit suicide. Because now you're not making money, you can't pay your bills. What are you going to do? You know what I mean? All these pressures, all these things add up. And as an addict, like, where do we turn? We turn to drugs and alcohol, right? Yeah.
How long have you been clean, by the way?
I get it.
How long have you been clean?
Been about 2 years.
Awesome.
A little over 2 years.
Congratulations. That's
Yeah.
awesome. If you don't know an addict, or you've never been addicted to something yourself, it's not only is Chloe dealing with this identity kind of affirmation, but she's also dealing with this struggle that we also ostracize. Once you become a drug addict, you're a fucking pariah as well. So if you're a transgender drug addict, Jesus Christ, do you have a chance? I mean, this is a real person I'm talking to, people. You understand? This is a real fucking experience of somebody that has to go through this shit, and it may not be you, but this is a person that fucking deals with this shit. And this is why I bitch and moan and complain about any fucking body that wants to argue our health system is fucking effective. You're fucking crazy. You're high. You need to go to a fucking therapist and get your fucking head checked, because this is a real person that's trying to do their journey, taking pay cuts to try to fulfill their journey and who they are. And sorry, I'll get off my fucking, it fires me up, because again, the experience that people have, I feel like so many people just won't wrap their head around things unless it happens directly to them. And this is why I wanted to have you on, because this is my first question that pops to mind is, like, I thought we dealt with the pre-existing condition problem with the ACA. Is that not the case? Why wouldn't they be able to cover you if you have a pre-existing condition?
That's their loophole. That's what they use to get.
So you're saying that they passed the ACA, and again, it had its problems. I'm not a fan of it, but it was better than what we had, and they were trying to get rid of the issue where insurance companies could deny a pre-existing condition. That was like something that was talked about as being on the forefront, but you're suggesting or saying that they're denying you your claim for funding for your disability and your affirmation surgery because of a pre-existing condition. Why the fuck why can't that be torn apart and said, hey, look, this is not acceptable? Go ahead.
Look, I found an article that was online. It was from July 15th of 2020, where the Supreme Court says a short-term disability plan not providing coverage for a temporary disability due to a gender affirmation surgery. Compliance. This is where, to me, I'm hearing that they're not allowed to do that. That is against the Supreme Court decision. So when talking with them, I brought this article up to them, and they were like, we don't know of anything like that. And I said, oh, so your ruling of what you do company-wide supersedes what the Supreme Court says. Like, what?
So, and that's interesting, because I imagine that because of, and I don't want to use the term fringe, but how rare they may encounter a transgender person that's going through this process, that they probably don't even have a fucking policy. And it's probably just somebody going to supervise going, yeah, no, that sounds like that. You know what I mean? It could be something as stupid as that. And then that becomes biblical in that company. Okay, this executive said, fuck it. And so we're just going to do this shit. And the people that are doing are making the transition don't have the funding of Caitlyn Jenner and don't have the backing of that.
Exactly. Because this shit costs money. Let's be real. I got hit with, hey, by the way, before we have your surgery, you got to pay your deductible up front. That's why taking the job that I have, insurance is pretty good. I pay for it out the ass. A lot of my salary goes to pay for the insurance. However, it has covered me. That's the one benefit. I did my research on that prior to even accepting the position. I wanted to know what kind of insurance they had. I researched if they would pay for gender affirmation surgery, because we're talking like thousands upon thousands of dollars to make this happen.
I can't imagine. So again, I'm going to keep talking about healthcare forever until I fucking see this game changer happen. And your story's super interesting, because it sounds to me like they're fucking ignoring law of the land in a way. And I'm not an attorney. I know you're not an attorney, but based on everything you're telling me, that sounds like, again, when Jackie said, oh, the pre-existing condition, I'm like, wait a second here. That was fucking, you can't do that anymore, I thought. So apparently they fucking find a way to fuck us.
Yeah.
So let me.
Yeah. So.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna ask a different question. So finish your thought if you have one.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I reached out to my HR today after getting that news, and I said, I want my policy canceled with that company immediately. I refuse to continue to pay them for something that I can't even get. Why would I do that? Why would you pay? Okay, so that it's like going and paying for a service. Having somebody come clean your house, and right, they walk through the door. Yep, I cleaned your house. They didn't touch a damn thing, but you got to pay them. That's bullshit.
It's fucking thievery. We have corporate thugs in this country. So listen, change of direction. I'm gonna just say it because I told you before I have no filter. Well, let's just start. We'll start soft. So how is the family fallout or support now that you're on this journey? Can you talk a little bit about, without, I don't want to cause a family rift, but how are your sons dealing with it? How is your wife dealing with it now that you're fully committed? And talk me through that at all, that you're comfortable with.
Yes. Yeah. She's an ex-wife now. She moved to South Carolina. She took 2 of my sons with her. The oldest and the youngest went with her. The middle son stayed up here with a friend of the family. I actually used to coach baseball with him back in the day. So he lives there. The middle son is supportive, comes and sees me, still calls me dad. I wouldn't expect anything less.
Do you prefer that? Do you prefer to be called dad still?
I do, because I am their dad. That's one thing that I always be for them. I always be their dad. My youngest and my middle son, or my oldest son, will not talk to me. I've reached out. I did a lot of damage, not just with this, but in my addiction had a lot to play with that. And then you throw the divorce and the transgender on top of it. It's a lot of shit. I can't imagine.
It's tough shit. And I, by the way, I appreciate your candor. By the way, accepting responsibility, that's part of. You're not sitting here pointing any fingers. You're taking it, and I love that.
Hell no. Hell no. And the way I even did it was wrong, because it was like we sat down at the table, had a family meeting. I was shit-faced, and I said, hey, your mom and I are getting divorced. And then it was, oh, and by the way, I'm transgender. And
like a rock, man. That probably, yeah, okay, fair enough. Yeah.
So I don't blame them for being distant, and that's a lot to take in. I should have done it better. I should have handled things better.
What? Your journey's not over. There's always, so I'm not trying to be a prophet, but your journey is just beginning, and I'm sure that the fact that I heard you say accept responsibility, and for me, when I've been harmed or somebody's done something to me, it definitely goes a long way to hear acknowledgement. So I'm gonna cross my fingers that those relationships mend over time. I'm sure that's difficult for you. I don't even know what it's like, to be honest.
It's hard, especially with the younger one. Can you hear me still?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
This is internet's messed up.
Yeah, I think it's your internet. That's fine. That's all right. Hold on. I think we froze. Are you there? I think you froze completely.
Are we good, Nate?
Yeah, now we are. Now we are.
Okay. So, yeah, it's been tough. The youngest and the oldest moving down, and I wasn't even invited to my oldest son's graduation, high school graduation, so that was tough. But again, my active addiction really played a huge role in that. And that's not the person I am today. I'm clean and sober, and for me, I feel like I've done a huge turnaround. Now, am I perfect? Absolutely not, nor will I ever be. And I know that each day I got to continue to work on myself and continue to grow to be the person I am meant to be.
I love it. So this is the racy question. So did you miss your balls? That's horrible. I know.
No, not at all.
Okay. And that, but like, was there any like sensation? Do you have ghost pain there with that? And I'm sorry, but I needed to know.
No, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was actually telling my mom and my doctors, like, there was a time recently where I was like, you know how you get that itch every once in a while? And I was like, oh shit, I don't have that anymore. So it's weird. Yeah. I've had
And
it. Yeah.
sexually, then do your sensations feel this? Like, I'm not talking about the actual organ. I'm saying, like, in your mind, is it the same? I never even asked you. Are you attracted to men or women, or how does that work?
Women.
Okay.
Women, 1,000%.
Okay,
Yep.
interesting. So now that's changed. How does that play in? Does that almost narrows the people that you can? I'm sure I have to imagine that being a transgender person, there are some folks. In fact, I was reading an article talking about how a trans person might actually tell their partner that they're trans, so there's no surprise, and that a whole dynamic that comes with that. That's a whole nother journey for you to find somebody that's okay with all of that. And you're saying you're like, definitely, I love women, and now one of the tools is not there. So now what does that mean? I know I told you I was going to be raw. What does that mean?
Hey, I'm open. So to be honest with you, ever since my wife and I split up, which has been about 3 years now, I haven't been in a relationship. And I thought at one point I was seeing someone, and we had one date, and like I realized very quickly that I wasn't ready. I'm not ready. I'm not ready because of my addiction, my recovery, I should say. And because I'm not me, like my outsides aren't fully me yet. We're getting a lot better, obviously, now. I'm not ready for that. And I don't need that tool. Nor do I want that tool.
I'm saying that with all humility and.
No, okay. You're good. You're good. I'm just going there, and I'm not out for someone's genitals. I am merely looking for someone who is going to love me for me, who is compassionate. I can't wait for the day that I can curl up on the sofa with someone and just watch a movie. But I also have, with my kids being older, my youngest is 16, my oldest is 21, my middle son's 18. So with that being said, I have my own goals now that I want to pursue. Going to college, I want to become a licensed therapist for the LGBTQ community, transgender community. Like, I want to do these things. My main goal, to be honest with you, Nate, is to open up my own like nonprofit for transgender people who do suffer from depression and anxiety, have them come in so that we don't continue to lose these people due to suicide or drug overdoses or something like that. Like, I want to be,
I love it.
I want to be a figure of help.
I love that.
Know?
That's one thing I found with Jackie's journey too, is that with sobriety, is that in the program, it's like you give back. And so that is part of your therapy and part of your journey of healing is giving back. And so I love that idea. One of the things I struggle at doing things outside of whatever my goals are. And so people are always saying, hey, why don't you join this club or join this nonprofit? And I'm like, I'm focused on this stuff. And I know for a fact that I need to give more. So when I hear that, I'm like, it pokes my heart a little bit. Like, dude, you got stuff to give. Fucking get off your ass and give a little bit. So I love that. Yeah. I love that I just like that philosophy in NA of like kind of the giving back part of the journey. So you went through the surgery, you're now at a point where you're feeling better about yourself. You're actually becoming yourself in a way, I would imagine. And tell me about like when did you have that feeling like this is all right? Like, when did you know? Was it that day that you told your wife? When did you know that this was the direction? The reason I'm asking this question is because I think there's a lot of people that might be watching that may be going through something where they're like, you know what, I just can't talk about it. I don't want to. When did you feel, I guess you were drunk when you came out with to your wife and kids, but when?
So I came out to my wife prior.
Right, 'cause
it was, I just dropped the bombshell on the kids that day when we sat at the table. My wife, she came home, the kids were gone, and it was like, hey, I'm Chloe.
Gotcha. Did you know what your name would be, or did you come up with that? How did you?
Yeah, I came up with that.
Long ago or recently, or?
No, it was like when I was going through this whole thing, I basically wanted to keep my initials the same in honor of my parents who named me. So I was like, oh, Chloe Alyssa. And it just fit and I liked it. And I was like, that's who I am.
That's awesome. I wanted to ask about dating, but you said you went on one date and you're not ready for it. I love that too, by the way, because so many people on my Facebook feed are fucking looking for partners and they're fucked up themselves. And what you just said is, hey, I'm not ready. I got to be able to give to somebody. I got to get myself in a line. So what resources are out there for folks that you Googled or found? What was the best place that you found kind of refuge for as you were looking to come out and talk about where, if you're someone's watching right now and they're struggling, they want to know, I need to go here to learn more stuff. Where do they go?
Internet's fantastic. Again, watch I Am Jazz. Started from the very beginning. She knew at a young age. She was interviewed by Barbara Walters, who some viewers out there probably don't know who that is, but she was an icon back in the day. There's so much information out there on the web on being transgender. There are so many people that you can follow on their journey. I have friends that are transgender across the nation, and it's really just figuring out like a chat room or something. I've done that where it was all trans people. I recently just found out that there's a meeting that I go to it's trans and non-binary people,
when you say
which
meeting,
is fantastic.
You're talking about an NA meeting or an AA meeting?
Yeah, it's out there. You got to look for it, but it is out there. And that's just kind of how I started figuring things out, because it's hard to go talk to somebody about these things. The other thing is a good resource is going into therapy. I recommend therapy, like even for like where I work. I'm a big advocate of therapy. And finding a therapist that's LGBTQ affirming, they deal with the issues. They know about the issues. They can help walk you through some of these things. They can get you resources. They can hook you up with doctors, psychiatrists.
First of all, I love that. I don't love that people need therapy, but therapy should be fucking like going to the doctor for people. Like it should be like, all right, I'm fucking sick. I need to go to the doctor. And so I'm in therapy. I talk about it. I go in and out of therapy depending on my issues, and I'm not afraid of that. And mental health is important. And mental health doesn't just specifically mean you're dealing with identity issues or you're crazy. Sometimes mental health is just dealing with trauma or your fucking behaviors that you have today that are fucked up. So I think every person, unless you're born like from Jesus' womb, if that's even a thing, needs therapy. So I like how you led with that. That's something. So last kind of weird question. So as I'm reading about non-gender and transgender, is it typical? Is there a pattern, or I'm imagining there's not, but is it common for somebody to want to be a female or want to find their identity and then also still, I just find that interesting that you've made your transition and you like females. Is that common, or does it flip? Does it say, all right, or does it, I'm sure it's everything, right?
There's no cookie cutter for it. It's really your preference. It's your sexual preference.
Let me just interrupt you. I think that's the key right there. There's preference and then there's identity, right?
Correct. Yeah. Well, see, yeah, there's sexual preference and then there's gender. It's two different things. Your gender is who you are. Your gender is what is your genitals and what you have. That is how you identify. But your preference is either male, female, whatever. And something interesting that I found out recently, Nate, is, to be honest with you, a lot of trans people, because a lot of the other community, not all the time, but sometimes they frown upon the transgender when it comes to dating.
Are you talking about in the LGBT community? They frown?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Not all, but some.
Well, I was just gonna say the article again. I'm googling stuff, and
no, go ahead.
And I saw something that just talked about there's this distrust that people have, or that one could have if you're dating somebody, and then they tell you after the fact. But what the fuck are you supposed to do? Are you supposed to just like, is everyone supposed to walk around with the fucking placard? Hey, I'm cis male, and I like females. Okay. And so I feel like there's no, they don't get the same deference that maybe other folks. For instance, again, I'm going to talk casually, but I was blown away by my brother when he told me about bottoms and tops and how some people are bottoms and some people are tops. And I'm like, how the fuck do you know whether this is the gay community? What the fuck happens if a top, what happens if a top meets a top? Are they screwed? And so there's all this stuff that I was wondering, like how it works, but he was like, dude, it works out. Like people talk about it. And then he insisted he was one way and he doesn't go the other way. And I'm like, what happens in the other case? And so I wanted to be explicit because I think it's the same. It's sexual preference and sexual preference can exist on a spectrum. Same with sexual identity, as I understand it. And so when two people meet, it's not, like you said, all about sex. It's about the connection. It's about the snuggle time or whatever it is. And so those things between my top and top meeting, that question's kind of silly because if two people love each other, they figure out a way to do all the other things. And again, I'm still hyper focused on sex here, which probably is incorrect. Like you've now found your identity, and it's not about actually penetration with a woman necessarily, because that's different. And so it's not sex. It's like our genders are this thing, our genitals are this thing that we were born with, but how we interact with other people isn't limited by our genitalia. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's one of those subjects where people don't get squirmy talking about it, but I think that's why I asked my brother these questions. I wanted to understand, okay, this is a whole world I don't even understand. And I just assume I've got one place, maybe two, three, but like, it's not that hard to figure out how a man and a woman interacts. Even female to female, I think guys are always mesmerized or enchanted or whatever about how that works because they think that their dick's the only thing that can make magic. Right. So, but I think when people talk about trans, especially folks that are post-op, is that the right term, post-op?
That's correct, yes.
Then
yeah.
I think I have to imagine it becomes even more difficult for you to find somebody that's okay with everything, is accepting, and wants to have contact and wants to be intimate and everything else. It's just, I feel like it's another challenge for anybody that's trans because of the acceptance level and because of how binary we are with our sexuality in general. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And that's where I struggle because I feel, again, it shouldn't be about what body part someone has. It should be about how you interact and how they make you feel.
Yeah, right.
That's where it's at. Because look, you could go have the best sex in the world, but if you have nothing in common, is it going to last? Is it really any good? It's good at the moment, but that's it.
Yep. And
then afterwards, you're like, get away from me. You know what I mean? It's all about finding that connection and loving someone for who they are as a person, not what their genitalia is.
I love it. And I think, again, I come in with this with humility, and also I'm naive, but I think those are things that people think about and are scared of with trans is, oh, how are they doing things? What if guys specifically, what happens if I've heard my friends say, if I met somebody and I was making out with them and they told me they were trans, I'd fuck them up or whatever. They want to fight because you are attracted to this person until you knew their genitalia. So that's really on you, buddy, or girl.
You know, exactly.
And so basically what you're saying is you only care about their genitalia. It's really fucking, it boils down to what you said is like, what a limiting way of thinking about interactions between people, that it's all about your genitalia. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly. Oh, 1,000%. Because think about you're actually cutting your pool of people that you would be with really down, really honing it down, and you're possibly losing out on possibly the love of your life.
I love that, and that's exactly what I was thinking for you. Is holy shit, because you found your truth, now all of a sudden you're automatically limited because of all the societal pressures and all the fucking ways. And maybe a man or a woman might be attracted to you, but scared to bring you home to her parents because of all this stuff or whatever it is. So you've got this whole new world of obstacles. And this is why it's important that I think we free up all the obstacles for everybody, including LGBTQ, but in the healthcare system, because like we need to have a healthcare system that allows people to thrive, not just fucking patch up shit.
Yes.
And so it that requires mental health, comprehensive mental health. That requires real laws that are enforced by some kind of Gestapo. I don't give a fuck, but somebody should be walking into that firm and saying, motherfuckers, lose your license and you're not allowed to practice your fucking shit until you fix this, because this is the law of the land. This isn't fucking goddamn Zimbabwe or we're running around fucking shooting from the hip. This is supposed to be the greatest country in the world, and we're basically saying you're basically ignoring the law of the land. That's what it sounds like to me. Who knows? Again, we're not attorneys, but I don't fucking know why there's a pre-existing condition of your condition, especially when it was fucking created by the path that you had to take.
Yeah.
Listen, I think I'm going to allow you to say, what do you want to say to folks that are watching this? Anything about their approach, or maybe someone's watching that maybe gone through this, or even people that are like, fuck this guy. By the way, when we were going through the pandemic, I couldn't believe the vitriol that the health and the deputy health secretary took online from people I knew. Like, and they would just continually call her a man. They were like, they would use those terms, and they know that's offensive. They know it. And I think that I see the hate and the vitriol. What do you want to say to anybody that's watching, whatever? What's your, not final words, what's your beginning words?
Yes. Yeah. I recently did an interview on a local broadcast on television, and
now I got to know how shitty I was. You're probably like, dude, this I should have done my interview first. Just kidding.
It's all good. But I don't belong on Facebook. I got rid of all that shit when I started in my recovery journey as a way for me to cleanse myself of that negativity. And it was funny because after that interview, I was hearing about friends of mine were telling me about comments that were being posted on Facebook from that interview. And I went on and created an account, and I made one post, and my post basically read like this: to all of you that had commented on this story, I applaud you all. Whether you're in favor for me or not, that's your prerogative. You know what I mean? My goal, my absolute goal, was to get people talking. And whether they watched it, they read the article, they all commented on it, I got them talking. So I won that battle. And it's not that it's a battle, but it's something for the whole LGBTQ community. It's not just about being trans. It's people that disagree with how we live our lives. That's their prerogative. That's fine. But here's the thing I want people to understand. We're not hurting you. No one is physically hurting you or harming you in any way. We're doing no damage to you whatsoever. We're not trying to convert you into, hey, you have to be trans. We're not trying to do that. All we're trying to do is live our lives and be happy as people, the people that we were meant to be. That's all we're trying to do.
I love it. I support that 100%. Last thing I'll say is, first of all, thank you. I just looked down at my sound, and I did something today special. I recorded the sound, but I noticed it wasn't recording this, so I'm going to fucking have to smash the sound. But good news is today, I did the interview last time, and this happened, but I didn't record the sound. So good news is I have the sound. I just got to match it with the video. So I was freaking out there for a little bit when I was looking down, like, fuck, do I have the sound? And I do. So anyway, but so first of all, thank you for doing this. And I know, I love the fact that that my wife's working with you on your journey, and I love the fact that she's a positive influence. But most importantly, I love the fact that you're sharing your story. I think people need to understand it. I would love to see more. Caitlyn Jenner, to me, I don't know how you feel about it, but I feel like she has all the resources in the world, and so it's different for her journey than it might be for somebody else.
Absolutely.
And so go ahead. Were you going to say something?
And yeah, I just wanted to put a plug in there for myself.
Sure.
I'm in the process of writing a book, finishing a book. It's called The Image in the Mirror. It is my story. It's my journey through life and how I came out. And the reason I'm writing that book and I'm going to publish it probably through Amazon because it's easy. But the reason I want to throw that out there is because I know for a fact that there's other people out there who struggle. And maybe my journey will help them in some way, shape, or form. So I just wanted to put that out there as well.
Obviously, you can plug yourself. I'll plug that shit every day of the week if you want when it's done. So I love it. I want to thank you. I may, if I have any issues with this sound, I shouldn't, but if I don't, then we'll talk about it. But I think I got the sound today. I'm looking at it and it's recording. That fucking scared the shit out of me for about 10 seconds. I'm like, this was good. So there's so much to cover. There's so many more questions I'm sure people have. Would you be interested in coming on again, maybe for some follow-up questions later at another time or whatever?
Yeah, because the local media station also wants to do a follow-up. I'm waiting for them. They reached out to me while I was in the hospital, and they're going to do another follow-up.
Well, I will say,
I'm completely fine.
You reaffirmed the fact that I'm on the right path because media companies are chasing you down. Here I am, the lowly smashing the party guy, and I've got you on my show. So thank you. Maybe I'm a fake journalist today, but in all seriousness, I want to thank you for sharing your story here. And I'd love to talk more. And I am always in your corner as far as one of the things I talk about my show, and it may not be your cup of tea, but I'm always talking about making sure the people that don't have voices are fucking heard. And absolutely. I'm not suggesting that your voice isn't out there. I'm just saying there's a whole host of people that are struggling with this that have no fucking outlet and no one's helping them. And I really look at it as part of our mission to fucking make sure I'm speaking for those people. And it sounds chivalrous and fucking like really cliche and altruistic, but the truth is that's the legitimate reason why I'm fucking doing this, because I hate watching people punch down on people, especially when they're just trying to live their lives. You keyed on is really living the life the way you want to without hurting people. And so what the fuck? Let's help you do it. So to me, it's simple. Yeah. Listen, I'm going to wrap on that. I'm still sweating based on the sound scare that I had, but I want to say thanks a lot. This is super meaningful. I'm going to clean it up a little bit, make sure I have the sound. I'll send you, when I wrap this, I'll send it to you before I post it. If for some reason I wouldn't send you, but I have to send it to you before I post it, but it might take a while to get to you depending on how you want to download that. I'll probably use Google Voice or Google Drive, whatever. But you'll have a copy of this, and I'll try to clean up the sound because I know there were a couple times we had some bad issues. But I'll give you the unedited version once I get this thing wrapped up. So thank you for your time today. That was awesome. I think it was great. I learned a lot, and I hope I was respectful and I didn't make fun or make any jokes when it wasn't appropriate, because oftentimes I will say whatever's on my mind, and I felt like today you answered all my questions, so it was great. I really appreciate it. I think everyone will.
Yeah, no worries. It's been great, man. I appreciate it.
I love it. I'm excited for your journey, and I wish you the best, and we'll talk again. I'm sure we'll talk again very soon.
Yeah, anytime. Reach out.
Thanks a lot, Chloe.
Thank you.
Yep, bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, so now there's two of me. So, look, I'm not a journalist, but that was fantastic. I had questions. He answered that. She answered them. I keep on messing up the gender. She was fine with that, even though I made a couple mistakes. But I think hopefully you got something out of that. You can see that there's a whole different host of issues that you have to go through when you're trying to find your true self. And we don't make it easy for transgender people. And that's why there's suicide. Just do a Google search on transgender. You'll find tons of articles on the suicide rate for transgender super high. And it's because we as a society haven't figured out, and we haven't come to acceptance that this is a real part of biology, that the spectrum is vast. It's a spectrum. Gender identity is a spectrum. Gender preference is a spectrum. And this doesn't need science. This is actual people suggesting, hey, I don't have a preference, or I belong in this group or that group. And so when you see people like Ben Shapiro wanting to get on their pedestal and talk about the science behind it, I'm going to pull a Neil deGrasse Tyson and say, it doesn't fucking matter what the science says, whether it's a choice or whether it's predisposition. The fact is it exists. So we need to figure out how to deal with it. And I don't mean that deal with it as in like they're a problem. We need to figure out how to support these people in real time, because right now we're losing people. Imagine your child or your friend or your cousins going through this. They're not telling anybody. And next thing you know, because of the pressures that we've created for them, they decide to end their life. And that's a big fucking deal. And I just want to say that was awesome. I'm going to continue to advocate for Chloe and wish her the best on her journey. Let me know what you thought. Let me know how I did. Let me know questions that maybe I should have asked or I didn't.